he was the first white person to ever have dinner in their apartment. And she said in this letter, from that day forward, when I grew up, I always hoped to meet Italians because they're kind and they're nice to black people. And I cried.
I actually wanted to start with your mom.
My mom.
You had said about her, she was your best friend. Nobody could make you laugh like she could.
My mom had a very rough life, and as a child, her natural inclination was not to smile. So anytime I could make my mother laugh, it was a huge. My dad was a pretty funny guy, and he was outgoing. He was a salesman, so getting my dad to laugh was not a problem. But my mom, my grandmother had run off with another man, and they were kind of abandoned. And in fact, they actually took my mom house to house. I'll tell you a funny story. My grandfather had 6 kids. See if anybody wanted this one. See if anybody wanted to adopt it. So my mother stayed with this woman, Mrs. Nicholson, which was actually my wife's maiden name. And she said to me, "Oh, and I loved it." She lived down by the dock, by the seaports, and she had so many uncles and brothers, and they always brought me a Tootsie Roll or a popsicle or some sort of little gift. And I said, "Ma, it sounds like that was a brothel." And she went, "Oh." It never occurred to her. She went, "Oh my God, I think you're right." It just struck me as funny, but that was always my life's goal, to kind of make my mom laugh, just to get her to smile.
She left Scotland in 1923. How do you think the childhood impacted her?
Oh, a huge impact, huge impact. I'll tell you a funny story. My mother wanted to come back to, my mother hadn't been back to Scotland since 1923. Okay. So late 80s, I say to my mom, "Come on, me, you, and Daddy, we're going to go to Scotland and go back." "Oh, well, you and Daddy go again." And I go, "Dad, why doesn't she want to go?" He goes, I don't know. So I can't figure out. She's always talked about Scotland, And here's the problem. My dad was a prize fighter. He was a tough guy. He took my mom down to get her citizenship. Okay. And you could get 6 questions wrong and still pass. If you got the 7th question wrong, you had to wait a year or whatever it was. My mother's got 6 questions wrong. The 7th question was, what is the U.S. Constitution? And my mother said, "It's a boat." And Judge, I'm sorry, it's wrong. My father goes, "It's a boat. It's a Boston Harbor. It's right there. It's a U.S. Constitution." My dad's yelling at the judge, and they yell in front of the judge. "Look, fine, it's 5 o'clock. Look, Judge, all right, you passed. Just get out. So my mother was convinced after we left that the judge went back and tore up her application, and she'd never be able to leave the country again because she flunked her citizenship test.
Your dad, you wrote perhaps the defining incident of his life took place when he was about 13. There were like 6 or 7 guys that robbed him, and then he kind of over the years won by.
Yeah, that's true actually. Have you ever heard of Italian Alzheimer's? That's where you forget everything but a grudge, And my dad was old school. Yeah, he got beaten up by these 7 guys one time. And he spent the next 10 years tracking down each one and just beating the crap out of him. Yeah, my dad was a tough guy.
Didn't he start training when he was 63 and then knock some guy out?
No, my dad worked for the insurance company, and my dad treated all the men pretty well. He'd bring them home for dinner and all this kind of stuff. And the union guy came around and said, "You're going to do this, you're going to do that." So my dad, as mentioned, used to be a fighter. So he went back into training for like 6 weeks, running and so one day he's sitting in his office, this guy comes in, my father goes, "Hey, come here," boom, knocks him out, knocks the guy out. Guy runs, gets the cops, comes back with the cop. Meanwhile, when the cops come in, my dad, he puts his 2 hearing aids in and his big glasses, and he's sitting in the chair like this, and the cops come in. "Where's the guy that beat the crap out of it?" "That's him." "That guy? How old are you, sir?" 63 years old. "He's 63 years, how old are you? 49? Yeah, hilarious, yeah.
You once got a letter from a woman asking if it was in fact your dad who went around to collect a nickel from them each week.
That's an interesting story. You know, my dad was a great teach by example kind of guy. And my dad was not a greatly educated guy, but a smart guy. And when he quit fighting because he said he realized even on his best day at work, he got punched in the face. So he went to work for Prudential Insurance. And he went in, he said, hey, what's your toughest place to sell insurance? I said, Harlem, black people don't want insurance. And my father thought that was stupid. Why wouldn't they have families? Well, no, you know, people just race, you know, whatever. My dad, well, give me that district, give me that. So my dad he went door to door selling nickel policies. When my dad died, I told that story on the air, and I got a letter from a woman, and she said when she was a little girl, like 5 years old, Mr. Angelo would come to their house, and he always brought her a Tootsie Roll or candy. He was the first white person to ever have dinner in their apartment. And she said in this letter, from that day forward, when I grew up, I always hoped to meet Italians because they're kind and they're nice to black people. And I cried.
What about that even gets you a little emotional?
Well, it just gets me to this day. That, you know, my dad was a street kid, you know, and it's like my dad would always say Negro. I said, Dad, you say black now. I feel like when I was a kid, that was a racial, when he was a kid, that was a racial slur. He would get in fights, you know, when somebody used to, hey, black man, you know, instead of Negro or colored, which is what they said, you know. But it was just, guys didn't do that, especially Italian street guys. You know, you sound like. But you know, the people he did well in Harlem. People liked him. But I never knew that story until the lady wrote me that letter. You know.
What do you think you learned from him?
I think all the right things. You know,
Which is what?
Well, I try to be loyal to the employees and things like that. I've always had the same people. I believe that almost anybody can be fixed. You know, kindness seems to work pretty good. I remember one time I was pulling out of the Tonight Show and a crazy guy threw himself in the hood of my car, you know, and the cops come over and I said, what's the problem? The guy goes, well, he had some. I said, well, get in the car, we'll talk. Well, what's the matter? Well, he just wanted to talk. He wanted to tell me something. And we talked a little bit. Okay, he shook his hand. It's fine. The same thing happened. I was sitting in my house one day. A guy burst through the door. Front door was open for whatever reason. And he starts yelling. And I said, come in. Marissa says, honey, what's going on? I said, a friend of mine's here, honey. Oh, he wanted me to call Governor Schwarzenegger and tell him, you know, I mean, just crazy, you know. And okay, all right. I said, well, let me see what I can do. You know, okay. I took him to the car, walked him to the door, you know. Then I called the cops, and they picked him up like 5 blocks away. And, but that's what works for me. I mean, any one of those times, I'm supposed I could have been stabbed to death, and people, it's not a mistake. But I don't know. I like humans. I tend to. If you treat them kind, like any other kind of mammal, they respond well to it. And that's always worked for me, so. I had great parents. I was very fortunate. I can't imagine where I would have been without, because you know, you go down life and you think, I could go this road or this road. And this road, but I've done this and not done that. And each step of the way, you think of decisions that you made and where the influence was, you know. I mean, if my father had been a drinker, I probably would have been a drinker, you know. I remember my dad came home one day, he made a big insurance deal. And he's giving out cigars, and they're all patting him on the back, and I'm thinking, oh, that's what success looks like, you know, when I was a kid. I want to be like that, come home and everybody go, oh, yeah. I mean, to this day, I'm still the one that, you know, tries to take care of the family, all the relatives, you know, because when they go home, oh, no, Jay gets the big meatball.
And your mom even said to you, at some point, she doesn't know what she would have done if not for you.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the greatest thing my mom ever said to me. Yeah.
Do you remember?
Well, she said, I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't come along. To this day, gets me.